Hi, I'm Cynda Valle. Welcome to the Beginner's School and the oil painting demonstration. What oil painters have been striving to do for the last 500 years is to paint luminous paintings. That is, paintings where it appears as if the light source was within the painting itself. It's quite striking to look at, and as we humans are kind of primally drawn to all kinds of light, you can see how having an accurately painted lighting situation, a luminous painting in your house, would be quite gratifying. So, how do you do it? We're going to start talking about oil paint basically in two ways. It handles quite differently if the paint has been thinned to the degree that it is semi-transparent, in other words, that you can see through the various layers. It handles quite differently when you are using opaque paint, which is usually any oil color with white added. We use those colors to express the lighter lit areas of the setup. So let's forget about the lighter part of the picture right now. I want to focus to begin on thin paint. They're called glazes, how to make one, and what they look like. So we will be painting a small sample painting in just a minute. But to begin with, I want to just show you exactly how cool I think that thin paint is and how helpful it will be for you if you start to paint the painting in a process where you begin thin and end up thick. So let's start by mixing one and kind of seeing what it looks like. You begin by placing a very small, hardly any actually, puddle of the medium. In this case, we're using the Neil McGilp. You take a small bit of your paint. We're going to start with the quinacridone red over here. You mix it thoroughly. What we're going for is the strongest color you can possibly mix that still has a semi-transparent quality. So I'm loading up my brush with a consistency of paint that I think will be just what we're looking at. Now I'm going to start it up here and work my way down. If it looks like you didn't get enough on your brush, you can just come back and scoop more. Do you see how bright the color is? If this were acrylic paint, we would have had to stop minutes ago because it's so fast drying. But the oil gives us plenty of time to work that glaze until it's absolutely perfect. When we're working with the thinner, transparent glazes and the shadowy parts of the picture, you'll notice that the hallmark of this particular brushstroke is that there is no visible brushstroke. So there it is. Now, I don't know how well you can see this in your home studio, but this is probably one of the brightest reds you'll be capable of mixing in any medium, be it oil paint or acrylic or whatever. You can see it's still transparent up here, so the white paint is showing through, making that thin application of quinacridone red super bright, super strong. It's this ability to make colors that are in the middle value very bright that makes oil paint really suitable for painting light. So what I'd like you guys to do is get a scrap piece of canvas that you have or a scrap page out of your canvas pad and set it up like this with 3 graduating columns. You need to start to get a feel for what the proper consistency is and how to push the paint along. But because it is oil paint, you have all the time in the world. And if you feel like your glaze is a bit anemic, which tends to happen when people start up, they tend to add a little too much of this and not as much paint. Try to remember it's the brightest, strongest color you can make. And the thinning of it, the thing that makes it transparent, is this scrubbing motion. So take a Filbert brush. Filbert is a brush that's slightly rounded at the end. Let me find a more extreme example, like this one. It doesn't matter, you'll see as the years go by they get really worn down, your scrubber brushes like this, not to worry. You can use them right till they get to the nub. What you want to make sure you do is buy stiff bristled Filberts. That's the name of the rounded top. The stiff bristled will do this job of scrubbing better. Soft bristles, they will disintegrate within just a few days. So make sure you feel it. You've got a nice stiff bristle for your scrub brush. That's what I call it. Okay, just to review, we just mixed a glaze with our medium and our oil paint. Not too much medium because you'll end up with an anemic glaze. The action of applying that glaze we call a scrub. When my whole class is doing it, I hear this sound. I don't know if you can hear it, but if you can't hear that little scratchy sound, almost as if you were sanding the end of your brush against sandpaper, then you're maybe not pushing it hard enough. It's real primitive, real easy. Anybody can do it. So take any color, start it at one end and work it down and see how long you can make that paint move. For our second stripe, try this. Try mixing. You can use any color you want. I'm going to stick with my quinacridone red. Start up like you did, but instead of making it all the way to the bottom, make it go halfway. Basically, you put the paint down, and then if you want to blend this more smoothly into the background, you take what we call a blender brush. It just means another brush that you have that is completely dry. Move it up like that, and it perfects your glaze. Me, I'm a finger gal. 40 years ago, I started doing it with my fingers, so that's my kind of blend. But you can blend with a dry blender brush. Just try and keep it dry and clean. Your finger, or for the large blends, you can use a rag or a paper towel. For this second set, try to use one color coming up from the top, and let's say an opposite sort of color coming up from the bottom. I've chosen my ultramarine blue here. Set it in. It'll be strongest here at the bottom, and work your way up. Beware of anemic glazes. Remember, the spreading of the paint is what thins it, rather than you mixing a real thin mixture on your palette. Okay, that's really all we need right there. Then you take your dry, clean blender brush, or your blender finger, also has to be clean, and just go ahead and perfect that blend. Going to add just a touch more paint and medium just to make it ever so slightly smoother. Again, doesn't have to be your hand. Use the blender brush if you like. It's just an old habit that I cannot break. So again, the hallmark of the glaze is little or no brush stroke, and that's what we're going for. So let's start with the last section and a trick I learned from Bob Ross. It's called liquid white. It's a product that is sold in art supply stores, but it's really much easier just to mix it up yourself. You take some of your solvent, in this case Gamsol. You take a little of your medium, in this case Neo McGilp. Add some white and make a very wet, juicy, runny, never used for any other purpose here in my studio, but it is a liquid white, and it will make the subsequent glaze go on much easier. Always use the biggest brush you can to do the job, so I'm going to switch to a slightly bigger brush. Slightly more. We also tend to undermix. Okay, looking for runny. When I put it on the canvas, it should run. That's how wet you want it to be. Okay, here we go. And just quickly, lightly, wetly, loosely get kind of an undercoat of wet paint. We're using liquid white, but you could also do this if the resulting blend that you were looking for was really dark. You can mix in a little of a dark color, like this, an ultramarine blue, or this, an phthalo blue. You can also do a clear liquid, which is just a mixture of the Gamsol and the Neil McGilp. Okay, so we're ready to do a blend. Let's do a sky one, just because I was just talking about a sky. They're generally darker and brighter at the top, bluer, shall we say. You take a puddle of your medium, a very small bit, and a much larger amount of paint. You just have to play with this, experiment with this, and you'll start to get a feel for when you have the right consistency. Right consistency of the paint makes your job super easy. Basically, make it much thicker than you think it needs to be, knowing that the spreading of it on the canvas is what thins it out enough to be a glaze. So we want strongest possible that we can still see through. Okay, when you get to this point, I think I want to make it a little brighter, a little darker here at the top, so you have a chance to add more here. Then you take your personal blender, in my case, thumb. Oh, let me use this is probably the recommended method to do it with, not with your finger. Do it with a clean, dry brush. Super easy. Again, we're looking for little or no brush strokes. Now, if I wanted, I could lay another color from the bottom up. Let me just lay, since we're here, like the opposite. I'm going to go back to that little cadmium orange, little cadmium yellow, just to make something that's kind of opposite of blue. I'm picking like a really strong orangey red. Up from the bottom. And then after this is dry, you could paint whatever you want on top of it. But when the blend is any wider than about 5 inches, do try this liquid white, liquid black, or liquid clear. It really makes a hard job easier. When dealing with the lighter areas, you use a different brush. It's still a stiff bristled brush. It's going to have a very hard job, so we want a strong, durable brush. We are now looking for values that are lighter than the brightest color there. We mix them. We almost always start out with white as our base. Rather than starting out with the color, start out with a little puddle of white as the base.